This is the Dragonbane Quickstart rules. It only gives a glimpse into what the full rule set will be like, but I have been impressed by what I've been reading so far, so I thought I'd do a GM's perspective and share my thoughts about this. If that interests you, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. This is one of the character sheets at the back for one of the pre-generated characters, the mage, the elementalist, and this is the quickest way to show off a lot of the rules in one place. So what makes up a character? We've got 6 attributes that will feel familiar to many D&D players: strength, constitution, agility, intelligence, willpower, and charisma. Your constitution score equals your hit points. This game knows no character levels and no hit dice. Your constitution is your hit points. Only way to get more hit points, maybe abilities and spells and potions for a buff, but mainly raise your constitution score to get more hit points. If you look at another character, Mallard the Knight, he's got constitution 16, so he's got 16 hit points. And the willpower score equals your willpower points. Willpower points are spent when casting spells or activating certain special abilities. The elf, the hunter, got the animal kinship ability, which lets her tame beasts to fight by her side, and if she wants these beasts to attack the same enemy she does, she has to pay 3 willpower points and a free action to make that happen. So this gives every character something special to do, something to spend their willpower on, and not just the mages. It also means that the mages don't need to prepare their spells. They can cast any of their spells as long as they've got the willpower points to do that. Furthermore, there's one rule I think is really cool. You can use hit points instead. When you run out of willpower, you can roll dice on your hit points, so it's a bit random. You can bring up that rule. Power from the body. If you're running low on willpower points, you can draw power from your body if need be. This is harmful, potentially lethal. Roll a die of your choice, d4, d6, and so on, before casting the spell. The result indicates how many willpower points you gain and can use straight away, but you also take the same amount of damage. If you reach 0 hit points because of this damage, it happens after you cast the spell. So in a pinch, you can sacrifice your hit points, cast a big ass fireball, and then keel over dead. If you got players who take hours preparing their spells, choosing their spells each morning, this system eliminates that. Also, if you got players who don't like the spell slot system in general, this eliminates that. Furthermore, the characters are described by their skill. This is a D20 roll under system. So you roll a D20 on your axis skill, and you have to get below 5. So 5 is really bad. But this character is mage, so for him, close combat, not really that important. The magic schools also work like skills. So if you want to cast a skill from your elementalism school, you roll on this here, elementalism 14. And from what I can see from the pre-generated characters, 14 is the maximum skill at level 1. And usually as a GM you don't have to set a target number for a roll, just have the character roll. Here under boons and banes, so this is just roll with advantage or disadvantage, same as in 5e. Here it reminds you, normally the GM does not assess how difficult an action is. You only roll dice in challenging situations, period. But sometimes the GM might want to underscore that external factors either help or hinder you in action, so you get a boon or a bane on your roll. That means you as a GM don't have to assign a target number to roll. Target number to beat is either the ability score or the skill score. If you think there's something hindering the action, you can give them a bane. If they get some help, they get a boon. These even out, and eventually you have either none, a bane, or a boon, not more than one possible. Same as with disadvantage or advantage. But you don't have to think about target numbers or modifiers at all. And you should only let the players roll if they are doing something challenging, something that is actually hard. The game also knows critical success and critical failure. They call it rolling a dragon and rolling a demon, which is kind of a nice nod to the original name of the game, Drake och Dämoner, and to the lore of the world, where dragons represent the forces of order and demons represents the forces of chaos. So a natural one is a critical success, and in combat that means you can do double damage, for example. And rolling a demon means it's an automatic failure no matter of your skill level. It also means you cannot re-roll. This game has an interesting re-roll mechanic. If you fail at a roll, you can decide, the player can decide that you pushed yourself beyond your limits to get another roll. And no matter if you succeed or fail on that roll, you get a condition. There's one condition for each ability: dazed, sickly, exhausted, angry, scared, and dirty. Never mind the names. What it means is that you get a bane, a disadvantage on any roll corresponding with that ability. So on the ability checks, straight on the ability, on skill checks for a skill with the corresponding ability. And the player can decide, if they are pushing the roll, what condition their character is going to suffer. But it should make some sense within the narrative. For example, if you fail at a strength-related task, it's easy to get dazed. But maybe you see there are many strength-related tasks coming up in the future, so you don't want to be dazed and have disadvantage on all of them in the future. So instead you say, I think I just pushed myself and I had to puke, so I'm feeling really sickly. Very tired and I'm feeling the burn, so I'm exhausted. You might even say, that I got really angry. I got really angry because it was so hard to achieve that, so I got the angry condition. Let it make some sense within the narrative and then just go with it. Once you've marked all of your 6 boxes, not only do you get disadvantage, a bane on all of your checks, you also can no longer push rolls, period. So at that point you're so exhausted you should really take a rest. This game uses 3 units of time. A round, which is 10 seconds and is enough time to take your combat action. A stretch of time, 15 minutes, which is enough time to explore a single room or take a stretch rest. And a shift, which is 6 hours, which is enough to hike for 15 kilometers, so assuming to hike 1 hex, and to take a shift rest or long rest. And in a stretch rest and a short rest, you heal 1d6 HP, 2d6 if someone else succeeds in a healing roll and tends to your wounds. You also recover 2d6 willpower, and you heal 1 condition of your choice. So it's a good idea that after an encounter, after something strenuous, you look for a safe spot and do a stretch rest. But there are no abilities and no spell slots that require a long rest. Everyone can benefit the same from a stretch rest, so you will only push for the long rest, the shift rest, if you've suffered too much damage and exhaustion that you can't recover it in a stretch rest. So shift rest, 6 hours, only can take place in a safe location when there are no enemies nearby. You recover all your hit points, all your willpower points, and heal all conditions. So this game is quite generous with available healing. In that sense, it's pretty heroic and forgiving. Also, characters don't just die. It's similar to 5e. When you reach 0 hit points, you drop to the ground and make death saves, but you roll on your constitution attribute. So a really tough character with high constitution has a good chance of getting back up on their own, and they recover 1d6 hit points. But after 3 failed rolls, the character dies. And if they suffer damage, any damage while they are on the ground on 0 hit points, it automatically counts as a failed death roll. Also, while they are on the ground, they can be rallied. Someone within 10 meters can just shout at them, "Keep going, mate, you have to push!" And then they can act for a round, despite having 0 hit points. This is done through the persuasion skill. You can even rally yourself and say, "I have to do this!" But you get to roll with a Bane. And this sounds like a fun roll. This is also very heroic, that you're pushing despite actually being close to death for one more heroic push. Then of course you can be healed. Successful healing roll, it's just one action, recover 1d6 HP. So healing magic and magic potions are not mandatory. It also knows instant death. You don't record negative HP, but if a single attack would reduce your HP to a negative score equal to your full HP, the character dies instantly. So in general, this is very heroic, very forgiving, similar to 5e. Now armor works completely different. Rather than making it harder to hit you, armor absorbs damage. Just gives you a flat armor score, and you subtract that from any damage before you subtract it from your hit points. Though there are ways to bypass armor. Combat is again similar to 5e. It knows rounds and initiative. You have a combat action per round, free action and movement, and you can take your movement before and after your action. And you draw initiative in the form of cards, 1 to 10. Then each player can just place the card in front of them, and if they have acted, if they have spent their action, they can turn the card over. This is important because if you take a reaction in this game, then you use your action, use up your combat action for that round. So that also means if you have already acted that round, you can no longer react. Some of the reactions are parrying or dodging an attack. You cannot parry monsters, but if you're parrying and you get a dragon, you get a free counter attack that automatically hits. But if you're parrying, there's a chance of your weapon breaking if the damage is higher than the durability of your weapon or shield. Which means a shield is good just to be able to parry and not lose your weapon when that takes a lot of damage, giving you more opportunities to parry. And parry is rolled on your combat skill, while dodging is rolled in your mobility score. There's no chance of anything breaking when dodging, but you can't get a free counterattack. Furthermore, the game knows 3 types of damage: slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning. And some weapons, such as swords, can inflict both slashing and piercing damage, and you must state at the attack what you do, a stab or a slash, before rolling the attack. But you can do some tactics with that, because if you stab someone, if you are to inflict piercing damage and you roll a dragon, you can bypass armor. That's one of the options of the critical hit. You can either inflict double damage, immediately perform a second attack against the same or another enemy within 2 meters, or armor has no effect, so bypass armor. And you can only bypass armor with a piercing attack, but a piercing attack can never damage a parrying weapon or a shield. So if you're fighting against someone that is doing a lot of parrying and you can't get through that, you will want to slash at that and hack away the defense. And when you're fighting against something that has a lot of armor, you want to use the piercing damage to eventually bypass that armor. I think a lot of the combat tactics in this game will revolve around the initiative and the action economy, especially with your reaction with parrying or dodging. You don't have a passive armor class that a monster has to hit. In fact, monsters hit automatically, no roll required. So if your group is fighting such a monster, it might be a good tactic to actually let the monster act first and delay your own turn, delay your initiative, to see who is attacked by the monster. That character can then dodge with a mobility roll and not take the damage. And then you know that everyone else is free in that round to attack. But the same is true for the NPCs, the same is true for the monsters. So if it is a humanoid monster and you act before that humanoid, it might be a good tactic to batter him, so he is forced to waste his action parrying. And if you are acting after a humanoid, you may have to parry or dodge until a round comes when you either win initiative or when they fail in their attack, so you can get your attack in without taking the damage guaranteed. There's also some opportunity for group tactics, with the tank going face up into the enemy and hitting them, provoking to be hit because the tank has the hit points and the armor to take it. Monsters in this game are really dangerous by default. They automatically hit, but they do monster attacks. So you do a D6 roll and then you look which of these attacks the monster is doing. For example, paralyzing cold. Unfortunate character starts directly into the Death Knight's terrifying eyes as a wheezing sound is heard from the creature's throat. The attack has the effect of a paralyzing poison with potency 14. The attack cannot be dodged. But the GM doesn't just use whatever is the best in this situation. He has to roll on this, and also the monster can't do the same attack twice. If the same number is rolled twice in a row, you instead use the next highest number, and then 6 goes over to 1. Furthermore, monsters have a speed rating, and that tells you how many initiative cards a monster draws. Monsters, by the default rule, act several times in a round, and you have to take that into account when you're doing your tactics with the initiative and the action economy. What I find interesting is that this game doesn't use character levels. Instead, you improve your character by improving your skills, by improving your abilities, and by buying more abilities and spells. That means that your hit points never become 10 times at what they were at level 1, which in turn means that even level 1 characters are not that weak compared to level 5 or level 10 characters, and they are no level. Even beginner adventurers is a force to be reckoned with, and even a high level adventurer is not so powerful that they can just waltz through hordes of orcs that were a credible threat to them in the beginning of the game. The power progression in this game will be much flatter. But I mostly like that because the hit points won't become absurdly high. So it stays easier as GM to come up with a credible challenge for the characters. It also means that the character progression is way more free-form than if you're just leveling up within your class. You can decide when you want to put your experience points in new abilities or spells, or when you want to put them in your skills or your ability scores. I think the game knows classes, because here it says wizard and here it says hunter. I think it will be as it is done in the Forbidden Lands. Your profession gives you access to certain abilities that only this profession can access, and there will be a much larger number of abilities that anyone can access. What I really like about what I've seen of the rules so far is how streamlined everything is. You don't have to think a lot about the rules when playing this game. D20 roll under system is as easy as it gets, and you don't have a huge amount of abilities. You don't have a huge amount of skills, which would be my pet peeve with Call of Cthulhu. You have a small number of meaningful skills. You don't have to use spell slots. You're not pushed to take a long rest where a short rest would usually do. Armor is just absorption damage. Absorption just uses hit points. You can take your movement before or after your action. You have meaningful carry capacity and easy to use encumbrance rules. Everything just seems streamlined, fast and easy to use to me. And I like that. I personally can't wait for the full rules, even the beta, to come out, because I think this is a real contender to become my go-to system. Personally, I prefer even easier systems like basic D&D. Just 6 attributes, 6 ability scores is enough for me. But I know that my players like to have more room for character progression. So they like to have a few skills. They like to be able to buy a few abilities. So this might be a nice compromise. Also, message to Ulysses Games and the editorial staff of The Dark Eye, das schwarze Auge. This is how you do a rules light system. Much of this reminds me of how it is done in The Dark Eye. We've got the abilities, we've got a roll under system, we've got separate skills that also a roll under system, but this is just so much easier, faster and more streamlined. This is a meaningful active parry system. This has a meaningful amount of willpower and hit points, and gives non-magical characters something to do with their willpower points. So I would implore you to have a look at this Dragonbane, think about it, and maybe use it as an inspiration to do a rules light variant of the Dark Eye system, because that is something that the Dark Eye community has been asking for decades. Anyway, these are my first impressions of the Dragonbane system. Thanks for watching, and until next time.